Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Alex Avila of Love University, and we're back. I'm an author, psychologist, and speaker. Every week, we talk about how to love ourselves, others, and a higher nature, how to improve our finances, career, health, relationships, and spirituality. And today, we have a very special guest, Kat Moore. Now, Kat was painfully shy in early adulthood, but she is now a speaker, director of belonging at USC, and she's also the founder of the Belonging Institute, or studio, actually. And her flagship course, Click, has been taught at USC and many other places, MIT, Department of Defense, faith-based organizations and nonprofits. And her mission is to inspire people to connect throughout the world. And she also has a cat, she just told me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, it's going to be good. Now, back in the day, before the whole introversion thing became popular, I wrote a book actually called The Gift of Shyness. I'm actually a shy person myself. Mm-hmm. And in the book of Shyness, I talk about how shy people have some positive traits like extraordinary sensitivity and deep reflection, but they have what we call the self-observer, the self-consciousness part of it, that makes them shy away. They're afraid of being judged and criticized. Mm-hmm. And your story, I think you mentioned you were very shy, I guess, in high school. You were homeschooled, I guess, because of that. And then in college, you didn't make many friends. And then you started hanging out at coffee shops. And apparently you had some sticker that says, I'm happily married or something, or I love my husband, don't talk to me, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then later on, you started meeting people and developed to be the director of belonging. So tell us that story. This is pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, and I fully agree that shyness can be reconceived as a superpower as well. It's just learning how to embrace it and not let it limit us in getting our social needs met. But yeah, I grew up in a very small town outside of Pittsburgh. And this was in the 80s and 90s when no one even talked about loneliness or mental health or social health or any of these things. So this is all new language that we now have. But I just really struggled from the time I was little, really, with having more than one friend at a time.
Yes.
For lots of different reasons. And I dropped out of high school. I actually got an autoimmune condition in high school, and it changed my physical appearance. And so I was already shy. And in high school, that's already a difficult age, to gain confidence and figure out who you are. And it was too much for me. So I withdrew. And I see this a lot with how physical health conditions can end up affecting how we socialize. And so for me, I withdrew, homeschooled myself, was very isolated, like you said, through college. Yes. And then it was a long period of time for me of sitting in the same coffee shops in Northeast LA day after day, getting familiar in the space, getting to, say hi to the baristas. It took me a long time to build trust in that kind of environment. And then when I became a mom, then people started breaking the ice with me. So when people see babies, when people see dogs, they approach you, right? And so then people started approaching me. So then it was the next layer of learning to come out of my shell.
Interesting. So that's a great icebreaker. Now, would you consider yourself still shy today?
I wouldn't say that I'm shy, but I am an introvert. Okay. So, and that pertains to how you get filled up energetically. So I do need a lot of alone time, but when I'm alone, I've learned how to not feel lonely. So there's ways to be alone where you actually feel rejuvenated and connected to yourself versus being alone and feeling lonely, like you don't have anyone or anything. Exactly. So I'm not shy anymore, but I am introverted.
Okay, that's interesting. We'll talk about that. I have some ideas on that component. So the idea of loneliness, you call it being trapped in a snow cone, which I thought was a kind of a nice metaphor. And at Love University, we talk about loving ourselves, others, and a higher nature. Mm-hmm. But I think of loneliness as a disconnection from self, others, or a higher nature. And then you talk about loneliness as causing mental and psychological, physical problems. One of our missions actually here's to help people deal with their loneliness and be connected. Mm-hmm. And you talk about statistics like, I think you said is in 29 countries, 1 in 3 adults say they're lonely. And it can could cause early death. They said up to 25%. And this is kind of sad. 2 out of 3 seniors, they say their best maybe company is television.
Yeah.
So I even saw a recent Netflix commercial. The guy say, "Oh, I have a new relationship," and it was actually Netflix. So talking about that, this is kind of interesting. So how do you view that idea of reframing loneliness. You even say, instead of eradicating it, you say you want to befriend it. How does that work?
Yeah, I think there's so much language in at least Western culture that when you're met with a problem, you try to annihilate it. And
Yes.
so the war language, the ending things, in this case, loneliness is a signal. It's your body's telling you, your mind is telling you, your heart is telling you, you have an unmet need.
Right.
So when you have an unmet need, you listen to it and you try to meet it. You don't try to make it stop. So if you're hungry, you don't say, stop that. We need to eradicate hunger.
Right.
You say, we need to get you a sandwich.
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
right. And so with loneliness, I'm feeling lonely. First of all, having awareness that what you're experiencing has a name. I'm experiencing loneliness. There's a reason for it. I wonder what that is and be curious about that in a non-judgmental way. Say, how can I help myself get this very normal and basic human need met? What's available to me in my real life? How can I move towards that? And then take the steps that you can.
I like that, yeah. I mean, a lot of the older literature, when they talk about law of attraction, prosperity, affirmation, they always say, talk about what you want, not what you don't, what you have that you don't want, because that way you'll attract more of it. So you're saying,
yeah, absolutely. And I think, but being able to have the ability to pause and identify what you're even experiencing, and if it's loneliness, if it's a kind of suffering or deprivation, being able to sit with that long enough to at least extend compassion to yourself, right? To hold that before you jump into, okay, how do I create belonging, or how do I create more meaningful connection?
Right. So loving yourself, as we're saying, in a self-compassionate way.
Yes.
Beginning. And then you can extend that love outward. And the other thing, we talk a lot about connection, you belong kind of thing. You say it's our birthright. Genetically, we'll have belly buttons. So we're obviously coming for interdependence from someone else. And you had a baby too, I think, at the time, or you were pregnant. All this stuff kind of indicates that we need this. And there's a power of intentional presence. You mentioned that. What does that mean, intentional presence?
Yeah. So, well, in intentionality, that's to me the core of what makes us human, is that we have ability to make choices and to organize our energy and our time towards certain things and not towards others. And how we choose to show up, how much of ourselves we choose to bring into any situation we're in, is what is the real battery power in any of our engagements with each other that can make them meaningful or non-meaningful, just transactional. So if we're intending to bring our whole self into riding an elevator with someone, into talking to the barista, let alone into our, conversations around a dinner table or a boardroom table, how much of ourselves are we willing to bring? And the quality of our presence in any given interaction is going to determine what's possible for that interaction.
Yes. One thing that helped me a lot, and I recommend this to our listeners, is improvisational acting classes.
Yes, improv.
Because, there are many ways that it helps. One way is, seize the space. You enter a room in different ways, different emotions, and you kind of become a bigger person, and you kind of capture the audience. And I think you even mentioned improv as a powerful, interaction, going back and forth spontaneously.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, we have to be real careful in the time that we live in, with so much communication being digitally mediated or also asynchronous, right? So not happening in real time. That skill set, that improv skill set, also of being able to say yes and right to whatever's happening, to be able to have a spirit of, well, this is happening. It may not be what I want to have happen or what I thought was going to happen, but this is the reality.
Like you took some improv too, it sounds like.
Well, I'm a mom, so everything is improv.
Well, we said yes and, that's a classic, improv.
Yeah, yes and. So being able to help, it's actually a freeing principle for students who get real hung up in, but what if I say this and sound this way? Or what if this happens? A lot of fear prevents us from being present to just rolling with whatever's happening and being able to say, oh, well, no one knows. We're going to have to figure it out by being present.
Exactly.
So That is the principle of interpersonal communication.
Yes, I have an exercise in Shina's book. I said, get the fools out. So in your bathroom, you start jumping up and down and act crazy. And then it kind of eliminates the fear of being a fool in public because you kind of are already a fool in a sense.
Certainly.
So you get out of that fear, because basically a lot of it's about fear of looking bad or being rejected or not being enough.
Well, that's the core fear of human life, is if you're rejected, you can't survive on your own.
Yes.
So even if that fear gets blown up in our minds, like literally if I just make a verbal faux pas, that shouldn't get me excommunicated from the tribe, but it can feel like that in our bodies and in our minds.
Yes.
So you need some safe places and safe people to practice being a fool with before you go and really full on let it all hang out with your boss or with your, professor or whomever it is.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And the other thing is, you said that we should be open to different kind of friends. So maybe you have your bowling buddy or have some other friend. Now I did write a book, Love Types, on Myers-Briggs compatibility in love relationships. And I'm kind of interested in the application here in romance. I don't know if you talk about dating or, finding the right compatible partner, because typically similarities do best in long-term relationships based on research. So how do you advise people on that aspect? Let's say they want to find their soulmate or compatible partner in this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my specialty, but the way I approach those sorts of relationships is I really just help people go back to basics and say, what are the commonalities across any kind of relationship that are going to make it healthy? So you don't have a different set of, well, in a romantic relationship, it's okay if someone's disrespectful to me. And in friendships, it's not okay, right? So there's like basic indicators of healthy relationships. So does this person make you feel okay about yourself? Does this person make you feel safe? Do you make this person feel safe and heard? Do you help? Do you complement each other? Do you these sorts of things? I just bring romantic relationships back to really a friendship foundation of healthy relating. And then, once that's in place, I think it becomes clearer what is like a specifically romantic issue or something like that. But most of the time when they think they have a romantic issue, it's really a friendship level issue. That it's just manifesting in a romantic relationship that feels a lot higher stakes and amped up because there's all these hormones now involved. Right.
And also maybe a long-term future, family and children and the whole, long-term connection. Now, you struck me as a little bit of an INFP. I don't know if that's on the Myers-Briggs.
Are you trying to guess my Myers-Briggs?
I guess I was, yeah.
You're one letter off.
INFJ.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm a unicorn.
You're on time and structured, but you definitely are imaginative, emotional, and internal energy, it sounds like.
Thank you. Yes, you got it.
So you're the mystic writer, they call you. I call you. So you're interested in a mission in life, crusade, and spirituality, I imagine, is important to psychology and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel so known, Dr. Avila. Thank you.
So you could be a great therapist or a listener, I guess, because you have that ability. You're kind of a counselor too, right, for the students? So I imagine you play that role a little bit.
Yeah, I think of myself more as a cheerleader and a coach and brainstorming buddy, because I particularly am interested in occupying non-therapeutic space. I believe so much in the power of good therapeutic relationships, but I want to translate a lot of those skills into other spaces in a non-therapeutic way. So probably 90% of what I do with students is I listen. Okay. I encourage them, and I empower them to just believe in them to take the next steps in their own life.
That's awesome. That's really good. Now, you also mentioned an interesting term. You say, make yourself tappable. Like, I'm thinking someone taps you on the shoulder. Does that mean like putting yourself out there where people can meet you kind of thing? Or what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know people have all kinds of different personal space boundaries, and, that's influenced by a lot of different things, but, and especially post COVID, when you couldn't get 6 feet within anyone for public health reasons, it's kind of messed with all of our ways that we physically engage in relationships. But yeah, in general, the idea is to make yourself available. So even if you don't feel like you can proactively get yourself into a meetup or something, a group, or that's just too much for you, somehow find a way to put yourself in public spaces, whether that's online or in person. In person's always preferable, but if you don't have access to that, online, so that people who feel really resourced and are looking to reach out to people and include them and make friends can find you.
It's nice, yeah. One thing you also mentioned is to extend like a loving thought toward others. And I call it extend loving energy without expectation. So kind of like being like the sun, the sun shines on everyone.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Cover up, they don't like the sun, but the sun doesn't take it personal. They just keep shining. And some people love the sun. So, and you say smile and say hi and stuff like that. Also, do you consider sincere compliments also a good way to do it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the right
Make it
word.
sincere. Yeah.
Exactly. You need the modifier, right? Because people don't want to be BS'd. You can feel it. You can feel when someone means something and when they don't, and yeah. So becoming the kind of person who's looking for the good in others and looking to reflect that back to them.
Right. And again, the underlying aspect of people are kind of afraid of each other. I'm not good enough. I'm out of their league, stuff, especially in romantic relationships. So what is your advice on that aspect in dealing with the fear part of it, that they're afraid of that, judgment and rejection?
Yeah. I mean, whenever there's like a big and negative emotion or big and hard emotion, like that sort of fear, I think it's really important to pay attention to it and kind of give yourself some space to take a step back and ask yourself where that fear is coming from. And often it's coming from, we've had bad experiences in our past where people did reject us or did make us feel less than. And so to be able to say, I know where this is coming from, and I don't necessarily want to bring this into my next situation, and be afraid that person, is going to repeat the pattern. And then be able to tell yourself the opposite. Well, the fact is, I am good enough. And then that way, if someone is to reject you on some level, you have more stability to be able to say, well, that person did not perceive my worth. So you don't let other people tell you whether you're good enough or not.
Yes.
But if they show you with their behavior that they can't see it, then you bless them and you say, they're not for me. Yes, they can't see it.
Yeah, I like the blessing part, because you want to keep the energy positive. Opposed to feeling, your animosity.
Right.
Now, the other thing is interesting. You mentioned introversion. So 50% of people consider themselves introvert, or up to 50% currently in the U.S. And the idea that it has to do with energy. So you could be, I'm not that way today, I think a non-shy introvert. So I can go out and talk to a lot of people, but then I get tired. I need to recharge my batteries and take a hot tub.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of picturing you almost as a shy extrovert, because you're saying you're in coffee shops all the time. I would never want to be in a coffee shop. I'd rather be in the relaxed part of my home because there's too much noise and too much people. So how do you classify that? Were you actually a shy introvert or a shy extrovert, do you think?
Well, it's interesting because in certain loud, bright environments, I also am like, whoa, I need a tablespoon of that, and then I'm out. It's too much. It's too much. Right. Coffee shop environments for me are soothing. For me, that's background noise. It feels like a neutral space. I'm a writer and a thinker, and so I like that sort of atmosphere.
Right. But why not be in your home studio? Why go outside? Because introverts like to stay home usually. They like the cocoon. What was it about it?
I think for me, there's also a danger with introverts and also just people who have very isolated work, like writers.
Yes.
And artists, where you become unbalanced and you're around yourself too much and you're overthinking and you're obsessing. And so I think there needs to be some kind of counterbalance where you remind yourself, I'm part of a larger whole. There are other people who might need me, that I have a responsibility towards. Right. There's things that I could discover just by being out in the world that I need to infuse my writing or my inner life. So I think part of it was an attempt to balance out. I don't want to just sit at home by myself with my cat all day, every day. That's too much.
I was going to say that. Now, here's a little advocate opposite viewpoint. Let's say that, and by the way, I like to use the term internal energy. So I'm an internal energy person. Introverts have, connotation. And I love being alone. I do have my dog over here. I have one friend I talk to once in a while, and I'm perfectly content. Why should I have to go out to Starbucks all day or talk to people as much? How do you respond to that part of it?
Well, first of all, no one's making you do anything. We're all free agents. Right. But I think it's there's I personally feel like we have an obligation to each other. And so I think part of it is I could be content possibly having a very, very small nest of relationships that make me feel good and that I live through. But then I think there's always the question, the existential question on all of us of what are you willing to give up for others? And so I think it kind of moves beyond just a more selfish idea of what's good for me, what fills me up, to, okay, who else is hungry? Who else is lonely? Who else needs a friend? And I think that pulls us out of, yes, we need to take care of ourselves, but that should then spill into, how then can I share what I have with others?
Very interesting. Yeah, that's a reversal of idea. But I think the key is, you might want to streamline it to say we have the non-shy introverts, you might have ambiverts, we might have shy extroverts. So some of them may have different, like you said, needs or maybe abilities or energy, for certain environments. Do you do that as well? Do you kind of classify that, or do you say overall one program for everybody?
No, there's no one anything for anyone. Everything is unique. And I think that's the joy and the responsibility of each of us is to figure out in each season of life, given who we are, given what our responsibilities are, given what our capacities are, our interests are, how does this look in my life? So how I operate might look different today than it does in 5 years from now, let alone across individuals. So I think the idea, the image of wholeness for me is of a nest of relationships that has both breadth to it. You have different kinds of relationships with different kinds of people. And then there's depth to them. It's fine to have a bunch of people that all you do is you say hi to them as you're walking your dog down. You don't have to ask them how their soul is and get their whole medical history and be their best friend. But you do need to have relationships of depth as well through time and change that you really can exchange life with.
That's a good point. So different ranges of relationship. By the way, I just saw your finger. I like that color.
Thank you.
That's my favorite. As you can tell, I'm a blue guy.
Oh, yeah. It's sky blue. It's where it's at.
Yeah, that's my favorite. What's your favorite color? Or do you have one?
My little boy just asked me that the other day. Usually it's brown and white, which is not typical.
Interesting.
But
okay. So you just like something about those colors. I see. Now you do have an interesting program, and I like the term you use. You call it click. So I'm thinking like clicking with somebody, and then you have certain words that go with it. So you talk about connection. I think you said is one. Is also be present. Listen first. Investigate without judgment. Communicate kindness, which I guess give people the parking space that you're rushing to get or something like that, right? And give them a chance. And then follow up. So I'm thinking of this, and I see two elements. I see slowing down, and I'm seeing empathy. And I think you mentioned that in some of your stuff. Slowing down is probably hard for Southern Californians and maybe other people. You're in your car, you're on your cell phone, you're doing this and that. So how do we get people to slow down and have empathy to do the clicks?
Yeah. So I agree. The slowing down is a precondition to connecting meaningfully. And the orientation towards others is one of empathy, openness, care. So how do you get people to slow down? Well, I guess there's things that you could structure your environments or your workplaces to reward people who slow down. But just the idea of doing that, we put speed bumps on the road to stop people from crashing and burning. Right. What would it look like to design spaces or curriculums or workplaces that intentionally force people to slow down enough to be able to connect well with each other? But we don't do that. What we do value is speed. We value productivity, speed, beating each other. None of those help us relate well. Yes. And so slowing down, what you do is if it's a challenge for people, you like any habit change, you start small and you start with a habit they already have and you try to change it just a little bit. So for example, in the coffee shops, I don't say, hey, go sit there for 3 years. I say, hey, you're already there for 3 minutes while your coffee brews. Sure. You're just going to work in 3-minute increments. See how you can connect in 3 minutes and then you're out. So and then once people have a positive experience, it will build on itself. Then they'll want to, because it'll be in their body and in their memory. Oh, that was easy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, kind of micro interactions. I think you call it a little smile, a hi.
Yes.
Also, like even working out, I'm going to go to the gym for 15 minutes and then we'll see what happens. And you build it up because you feel the endorphins and the pleasure from it, and you're making gains.
Right.
I do recommend you get this guy, Carl Honore. Have you heard of him? He's a pioneer of the slow movement.
Oh,
The worldwide movement, and it started in Italy to enjoy longer meals, European kind of stuff.
yeah.
And actually, it's a movement now, actually worldwide, how to slow down.
Love that.
So that'd be kind of cool when you do that, if you get that, because I think that's a big part of what you're saying, right? Is slowing down to talk to people, right? Because people don't have, they think they don't have time to do it, right?
Right.
And
and being able to just continually have this issue raised, to challenge people in a novel and exciting way. I don't think people respond well to you should be doing this and you have to do this. No one likes that. But if you show them examples of look what can happen if you do just this tiny thing, you can get people excited to at least try something once. And then I think it has an energy of its own.
Right. And also, you mentioned listening. I think our personality, I'm similar to you and Myers-Briggs, except I'm more spontaneous, I think, is to listen, you said, without judgment. And you said listening is the closest thing to be feeling loved. And I guess people go to therapy, for this kind of experience, right? Where someone's finally listened to you without trying to say something back immediately in their head.
Yeah.
So that's a talent, I guess, it's important to develop.
Yeah, listening is the core skill set in terms of, I don't just work with a skill-based mentality, but if people are looking for really practical skill-based things that they can go out and test and try and do, it's always centering first on listening. And that's listening to ourselves, listening to the person in front of us, and then listening to the context that we're in. And that in and of itself is just the most complex endeavor. And it's one that you never master. You're always having to show up with the same intention, and then you develop, capacity, and you get better attuned, and you gain practical wisdom over time. But listening is never something that we check off the box.
I can tell you're a pretty good listener just by listening to you.
Oh, well, thank you. You too.
You're pausing and giving a little space for me to talk and then you to talk. And the other thing, I think, talking about follow-up. Now, this is something I may not do as much as I should. I mean, I meet people that I may not follow up. So what's the importance of that, calling or emailing people that you've met in terms of the connection part?
Well, we live in a hyper-connected society. Most people are actually over-connected.
That's true.
But the nature of the connection isn't meaningful. So we're hyper connected. So the follow-up or the keeping in touch piece has to do with making sure, if you have a house plant, you can't just water it once.
Right.
No matter how good of a connection you have with someone when you meet them at a networking event or in the neighborhood, wherever it is. The nature of relationship is that it's a living organism that has to be fed and nurtured and developed, and you need a regularity in order for that bonding to take place well. And so generally I advise students, for example, if you went to a party and you met a bunch of new people, and there was a couple people that you really, felt some kind of connection with, that you think that there's something there to unpack or develop, try to get on a weekly rhythm of connecting with them in person. Go take a walk together, to have that weekly rhythm. And that's a lot of how our world is organized. If you think about church services, for example, they're weekly. Right. There's a lot of things baked in that have that weekly rhythm, and that just helps people stay, form the bond to a sufficient degree, as well as continue to track with each other's lives.
Mm-hmm. But you think that's feasible in our freeway society? I'm talking about Southern California, LA, where people live far away and they're always on the move to get together in person. And what do you think of Zoom? Is Zoom an alternative, or you think is better in person?
Everything's better in person because we're not made out of pixels. We're made out of skin and bones, as well as some other immaterial junk, I think. But so we need embodied experiences. but also we don't live in a utopia. We have to work with what we have. So if your anchor people, like 3 of my best friends, one lives in London, one lives in Hawaii, and one lives in North Carolina.
So how do you do that? You must travel a lot, or?
I never travel. So with these relationships, well, one of the women in North Carolina, I grew up with her. Another I spent several years with. So I had in-person relationships. And I think once you've built an in-person relationship, it's a lot easier to sustain it long distance. And so, you work with what you have. But I think, if you have a regular rhythm of talking to someone weekly or bi-weekly or something, you still need in your, day-to-day life to have some people you are spending time with in person.
So what number would that be? Let's say an internal energy person over here, and then have an external energy. Is it the same amount? I think you mentioned 3 to 5 friends. Is that for both, or would it be different variations?
That does not change with whether you're introverted or extroverted in terms of people that you're meaningfully connected with, who you really feel like you have a reciprocal relationship with, all the good things.
In person, on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Now, I think what changes, my guess would be for introverts versus extroverts is the other layers of your nest, people you just hang out with, people you do activities with, that probably changes. Probably extroverts can handle way more of those sorts
100 people, that
group things. Introverts are like, whatever, I've got my 5 people. And then I have like maybe one other tier that I see monthly or something like that.
How about you? How many would you say you have of the core and then the external people?
Yeah, it's actually changed dramatically since COVID, because I had hundreds of people through the coffee shop. But once coffee shop culture was destroyed through COVID, that really changed my own nest. So I definitely have I'd say I have 3 like best friends. And then I have extremely close relationships with my parents who are in Pennsylvania and my brother.
Does family count if you have a child or something, or no?
Family counts.
Oh, okay. As opposed to just friends in general, right? Yeah. So has the coffee thing been destroyed? I have a friend of mine in the restaurant business. He says things have not really recovered, but now they're recovered. Are people still going out to places?
I mean, I don't have data on that, but I can only speak for my own neighborhood, really, and my campus. But it's not recovered, and I don't know if it ever will. It's very odd how it's unrolled. People just don't really want to linger and don't really want to meet new people. And I don't know if
they got lazy during the COVID. Like you can order at home. You don't have to even go anywhere. Everything comes to you, or just staying at home. Does that become a pattern, you think, psychologically?
That, and I think there's also still just fear probably stuck in our brain stems of I might get something that from someone who that wasn't present before.
Right. So there's different things. Now, on the positive side, the idea of spirituality is interesting. And I'm kind of curious about your spiritual belief or system. Years ago, I read this book that I thought was really wonderful, and it was called Celebration of the Disciplines. I didn't even know that this guy was at USC, and apparently he's your mentor, Dallas Willard.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you read that book, that one.
Yeah, I read them all, collected them all.
And he talks about the different spiritual disciplines to get you to this point of spiritual, actualization. He mentions like prayer, simplicity, which I thought was pretty interesting. He also mentioned solitude. Now, solitude may go a little bit against what you're saying, but how do you incorporate solitude in this thing?
Yeah, no, it's a really good distinction. So solitude is a practice that's chosen in order to, develop certain kind of capacity, spiritually, morally, mental health wise. And the idea of solitude, and this cuts across really any religious tradition, right? And even non-religious traditions, just spiritualities and cultural practices. And the idea is to be able to unhook from the world and from relationships with other people in order to have what's really going on in the depths of your soul have a chance to surface. But it's supposed to be in in balance with disciplines of community, so that you don't just get
service probably as well.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the two distinctions with any kind of spiritual discipline are ones that are disengaging and ones that are engaging. And so you need to have a balance of both. So you need solitude in order to let what's in you come up and meet it. And if you meet it with a higher power, if you meet it in your environment with the trees, you're unhooking in order to rehook more deeply into yourself, so that when you go back into community, you have a more authentic self to offer. You have hopefully better boundaries, all of these things, and then it's a rhythm of engagement and disengagement. So they really need each other. So we don't just want to talk about social connection; we want to talk about how to be alone well.
Right. So yin and yang, kind of an interesting dynamic. And the idea of actually, he was ahead of his time. He talked about simplicity.
Yes,
that's a big issue. Like minimalizing, all the clutter and all that stuff. I think the lady, Japanese lady, have you read her book about clutter?
Yeah, Marie Kondo.
That's pretty interesting, spiritual stuff. Now, he was a Christian, I believe. Well, do you have a path, spiritual path?
Yeah, no, I practice in the same tradition as Dallas did. And I also, so I practice in the Christian tradition, but I also have just involved over time practices from all kinds of traditions and cultures and the arts. And so that's the tradition I was raised in, and that continues to be a source of enormous stability and inspiration to me. And being in an office of religious life where there's so many different worldviews represented, and it's just such an enriching environment to be learning with and from so many different kinds of traditions.
Right. I think Jesus summarized it. He says, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself.
So, and if we just did that, the world would be a different place.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of what you're doing with connectivity and all this stuff.
That's what I'm hoping.
Is putting the love out there. Well, I really appreciate having you on the show. This has been wonderful to connect with you at this level. But we got to do it in person now, because you told me Zoom is not enough, right?
It's true. It's true. No, I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah. Do you ever get out to workshops or events? Maybe we could collaborate or something in the future.
Yeah. Let me know. That would be great. Yeah. I'm based in LA, but I can and will travel. So yeah, collaboration's where everything's at. And yeah, that's the goal, is that to just get to be with as many people as possible and
get out of the house. You're saying, no? Get out of
the house. Yes.
Excellent. And now you have a lot of stuff going on. Where can people get a hold of you, your projects and things you're doing?
Yeah, I love hearing from people. So the easiest is to contact me through my website, which is cat-more.com. I get all of those emails directly, and primarily my work that I'm available for to collaborate with people is around speaking right now, both remote and in person. So I do some consulting, but I'm really trying to move more towards speaking. And I have a book that's going to hopefully be coming out soon called You Belong. I'm working on that. And I have a podcast that's in the works. And then I have a Substack that if anyone is a reader and wants to engage that way, you can sign up.
What is a Substack? What is that?
Oh, a Substack is my newsletter. So that's also on my website if you want to sign up for that. And I send them out about weekly.
I see. I heard something about an application where people are rewarded for being connected. Is that something you're working on too?
Yeah. So we're developing an app called Rehuman that is trying to nudge people towards pro-social behaviors in like a fun, not heavy, not therapeutic kind of way. So we're redesigning it because COVID happened and it changed everything, but we're going to have guided journals and card decks and things like that to just
get brownie points for going to a Starbucks or something, or to get out of the house.
All of that kind of stuff. And it's supposed to be like real user directed. So, a lot of creativity and fun is the goal.
Fantastic. And tell us your website one more time, Kat.
Sure. No. Sorry. No, I'm forgetting my own website. cat-more.com.
Cat-more.com. And by the way, is your cat there? We can see the cat.
I'm in my office at USC right now, so my cat's at home, probably about to roll her eyes at me that I'm not back soon.
We didn't mention animals as a support. What do you think of that? Is that good too, to have emotional support from animals?
I mean, every campus.
It's not human, so it's not like a human thing.
Every campus should have at least a dozen golden retrievers.
I got one of those. You like the Goldens?
The Goldens are the best, but any rescue. I also support all the rescue animals.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, for people who connecting with other people is too much of an ask for whatever reasons.
Right.
Start connecting with animals. Start connecting with nature. Start wherever you can. Right. And then get filled up by that layer, and then that'll give you enough energy to risk to connecting with a spirit.
Plus, if you have an animal, people talk to you, right? You have an icebreaker and all that.
That's right.
And it's so cute. Right. So who knows? Maybe you join a dog group or a cat group or something at some point.
All of that.
All right, Kat, it's been a pleasure. It's wonderful having you on the show, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Until next time, this is Dr. Alex Avila, Love University. Have a wonderful day. So that was a great interview. Live at the Los Angeles Book Festival at USC. We had an amazing time, and this is a great opportunity to interview these wonderful authors and people that have a message that's going to help others. So, Love University students, if you want to be on the show in the future, or if you have a show idea and want to comment on today's show, you can reach us at 310-226-8090. You can write to us at loveuniversitylove@gmail.com. You can visit us at loveuniversity.love. You can also download the podcast on Podbean, Spotify, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Love University Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Love_U Podcast. And you can also go to our YouTube channel, Love University. So until next time, this is Dr. Alex Avila. It's time to put away your notebooks, your iPads, your phones. And class is now dismissed. Love yourself, others, and the higher nature. Until next time.